Telkom, moving with you. Celebrating our heritage, we are stepping into a bold new future. Join us. Telkom, moving with you.
All right, welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live, the part you love the most. We're on the bench with two young, smart, ambitious, if you will, senators. They're both senators, that's right, officially, even Sakaja.
Finally.
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 Yeah, congratulations, both of you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
And you both sailed in.
Yes.
Well done.
Yes.
Good job. Even though you're on opposite ends, you're still friends.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which is good.
Kabisa, yeah.
Which is good. By the way, Twitter handles are at Sen Mutula, at Sakaja Johnson, at Koinange Jeff, the hashtag JKLive. And of course, we're asking you the question, are Senator Mutula and Senator Sakaja Johnson a reflection of what we call the future of Kenya? Keep tweeting. SMS number 22422.
That's a question.
Yeah. And look at the numbers. 75% say yes.
Goodness.
Wow.
25% say no.
That's what we call a leading question.
You should have asked Aaron.
Oh, yes.
Maybe that's how they're reading it. Aren't.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's start first. The Friday decision, Senator Mutula, since you're a lawyer,
Yes.
you know this stuff. And is this, for anyone who's not into legalese, explain to her, was it a unanimous? Well, it wasn't unanimous. It was 4-2.
42 years.
Tell us, man, what went through your mind? Did you expect that?
To be honest, it came as a shocker to me.
Yeah.
But you couldn't tell how they were going to deal with it. It's not the decision, because it was going to go either way, but it's the way they handled it. Let me say this, and allow me maybe about 3 minutes to say so. It's called a Maraga moment. Since the advent of the new constitution, we've not had a moment like this when the constitution reigns supreme. One of the things that was supposed to be a game changer in Kenya was the Supreme Court of Kenya. And in 2013, Justice Mutunga lost that moment. Now, I want to explain that I've been in the 1997 election petition, which was filed by James Orengo then and Firoz Naorji, election petition number 1 of 1998. I was a student then. It fell on a technical issue. Come 2003, there was no election petition, but then the Chief Justice then, in 1997, the Chief Justice was then Bernard Chunga. Chief Justice 2003 was Gisheru. In an attempt to overturn the judgment of Kibaki versus Moi, he set up a bench of 7 judges in the Court of Appeal. I was appearing in that matter. It was the former Lamu senator. In that case also, the Chief Justice did not seize the moment. So that moment was lost. 2013, the Chief Justice didn't seize the moment. It was lost. Maraga seized that moment. And therefore reminds me of the Magna Carta. I don't know whether you've heard of it.
Of course.
2015, 1215 Magna Carta,
Magna Carta.
where the king agreed to be subjected to the law and to allow the citizens their individual rights against even the wishes of the king. So the constitution reigned supreme. The Supreme Court claims its place in the history of Kenya. And therefore, Jeff, after 10 years of the advent of the new constitution, somebody in this country has stood up for that constitution. And that is
I know
Maraga.
you're waiting to jump in here.
Well, not really. It's nice listening to Mutula wax lyrical about the case. I think it's bittersweet.
Yeah.
The first thing is there's just a beautiful reality of a country in Africa where we have an election, the highest standard of an election on the continent, where we even know who's printing the ballots. In 97, no one knew.
No.
Yeah.
2002 etc.
No.
How many are there per polling station? We have technology. We have an election where now we go in and there's a election management body that's set up in the proper way.
Yeah.
And after which people know they can go to court, question, and a decision will be made either way. That for me is a win for democracy.
Yes.
When you go to the actual happenings, I then have some questions to ask. Because if you look at the content of the ruling and the basis on which the decision was made, might not be the precise basis on which democracy is founded. You know, and the questions you ask yourself after an election, because even throughout the petition, I didn't see any question on exact numbers. You know, is there a place where Uhuru Kenyatta got 5,000 and it became 10,000 etc.? That you ask yourself, was the sovereign will of the people discernible in this election? Was it clear? You know, but despite looking at that, or rather, apart from looking at that, the questions being asked was did this form have a watermark? Did this was the procedure followed properly? You know, and I think even for years to come, you know, once we move away from the emotions of this specific election, it gives some interesting jurisprudence. But despite the fact that the discernible, you know, that the will of the people could be discerned, and it was clear that yes, these are the numbers, but the problem is the procedures. Yeah. Then that becomes the threshold. That tomorrow, then, if I'm vying against Mutula, I would not need to try and you know, inflate my votes. I would not need to try and you know, bribe a returning officer to say he got less than he actually got. I'll just tell him, just switch the form. You know, and this is a form that, first of all, is not even prescribed in the law.
Which form?
Leave you know, the security features on the forms. It's not the constitution. Leave the constitution. It's not in any statute. It's not even in the regulations. To just note to the suppliers a guideline. That then the will of millions of Kenyans can then be overturned because of a supplier guideline that please let this form have a watermark. And it'll be so easy to say, okay, yes, don't change my vote, just switch the form. So for me, it's bittersweet. I respect the decision of the court. And as you believe, we've said as much. We respect the decision of the court. We also have the right not to agree with the decision of the court. And the court has ruled that we go back to the polls within 60 days. Yep. The body mandated, I said it's October 17th. And I would just hope, you know, that leaders from both sides of the divide, you know, lower the rhetoric. You know, we're seeing some division coming up, so that we can just get over and done with it. Kenyans will decide whichever way they decide. Of course, you know, I hope how they decide for Uhuru Kenyatta. But whichever way they decide, let us then move on. Because so much then is slowing down in this country. Yeah.
Senator Mutula, NASA immediately called for disbandment, if you will, of IEBC, which is not possible.
No.
What do you want now?
No. Jeff, before I say that, can I respond?
Sure.
A right of reply. We sat for a long time in Windsor, in the Joint Select Committee. And that's a portion where the people who attempted to interfere with numbers and the people who attempted to interfere with the processes missed the memo that the country had changed. And those same people missed the ruling of the Court of Appeal before the elections, the one that was made in June, about the system. The central focus is the transmission of election results. Okay. That was
Are you saying they rigged?
Sorry?
Are you saying they rigged?
No. The court was very clear.
Not even the Supreme Court said
the Supreme Court was very clear that the third respondent did not interfere, was not found guilty.
Say his name.
Sorry? The third respondent. That's what he was referred to.
You know, there was nothing of Jubilee trying to
say.
Simply transmission.
But the court was very clear that the first respondent did not adhere to the tenets of the Constitution in terms of conduct of the election. That's it. The marking scheme is not what the third respondent does. The marking scheme in the Constitution is, and Article 83 and 86 is the first respondent, the Electoral Commission. That's it. Now, making this finding, they in fact found that there are several people working in the commission who were responsible for the mess. And therefore, we have a right to say that in terms of the integrity of the process, the person who interfered with that system, because they have been identified, you are marked for identification, we call it MFI in law, that person should not sit again for purposes of the next election. So you're actually calling for a cleanup of the system. Let me explain to this, Jeff. In the new law, you have regulations. In those regulations, you have an election committee chaired by Chebukati as the chairman. Those people who set up the system, the committee, is the one who knows. And they are working, all of them, under him. So therefore, where, Jeff, you have problems of who did what, you can only, it's only logical. Forget about even the demands that are being made. Jeff, I want to tell you that in fact, under the law, Chebukati does not need NASA or Jubilee to tell him that he needs to get rid of officers in his department or officers in various departments in IEBC who caused this election
but
to be
not
nullified.
Commissioners.
I mean, under the law, you will not be able to deal with the commissioners.
Correct.
Because
they're appointed by the president, or they have to be signed by the president.
Then
It's a long process.
It's a long process,
Right.
and you have 60 days.
Correct.
So therefore, in terms of the people who were identified,
Yes.
and the reports that were presented to court have got the names of the people who got into the system, who attempted to change, who logged in, where and when. Those are the people you need to deal with.
Okay.
We need to clean up.
Go on.
Number one, the report does not, naturally constitute the judgment. And which is why we're saying that the Supreme Court needs to expedite to issue the full judgment and to say which systems would need to be improved. And you'd understand, how it would feel for somebody who actually won an election, for it to be invalidated, not because people don't know who got what, but because along the way, certain administrative and bureaucratic elements were not followed. And another name for those elements might be then, constitutional principles, etc. But the fact is that the will was known. So even for us, we're saying, look, we want to win in a way that is clear to the entire world. First, based on our own standard, which is one of the highest standards in the world. Our electoral standards are one of the highest, Mutula,
Yeah.
based on that. And secondly, based on then what those guiding principles are. But nobody, not even the NASA petition, questioned the numbers of the election. And interestingly now, we're going into an election which is almost like a runoff because there are two candidates based on the 2013 ruling and opinion from the Supreme Court. And you're trying to move from a difference of 1.5 million between the the winner and NASA to just one person. The next election will be determined by one vote, because really, if you're splitting anything into two, it'll just be 50% plus one. So not much might change, but let's ask ourselves, what is this doing to the common person in this country? What is the tone then of the campaign and the narrative that is actually now going out? You've seen it's now taken a serious tribal tone that is not helping this country. It's not helping anybody. I'm more concerned with that because October 17th will come and go.
Yeah.
Kenya will have a president. After that, NASA might do another petition or not. But despite all that, life must go on. If you look at the losses,
Jeff,
right now, in the country, in terms of people who rely on a day-to-day to earn their living, business, investor confidence, etc. I think we need one day in the future to have a situation where an election in this country actually brings us together and strengthens us, as opposed to us just fearing division. And there are many things happening around the city and around the country that I'm glad I've not made it to the news. Because they're really sad things.
There's obviously ethnic profiling. I've just been reading on social media that there's ethnic profiling on Kiambu Road and other places. Yes. I would love that you highlight those issues because that is not the Kenya we're looking for. But Jeff, I wanted to say this.
But not to escalate them.
Not to escalate them, but to highlight and tell these people that you shouldn't do that. Jeff, the elections are so important to this country. And that is why even in the ruling of the Court of Appeal, they said, in fact, the peace of this country is dependent on how the elections are conducted. I'm surprised, Jeff, that even in the rhetoric going on in the political world, we have failed to understand that one person or two people or even four people in this country seated somewhere, I don't know, under whose guidance or interest would attempt to interfere with anything election. Obviously, some of them have not read the Election Offences Act. And what is worse, Jeff, and what surprises me, there's a report already in the media suggesting that the officers who have been suspended from IEBC have refused to leave. What does that tell you? That you have a problem in the commission. This is the commission, just like the Supreme Court, where everybody is holding with bated breath to complete an exercise which is holding this country together. So it is a serious issue. And Jeff, we must continue telling the chairperson that he must take his seat at the table and ensure that heads must roll, and he doesn't need to wait for the Supreme Court to tell him, because he is the chairman of that committee that supervises elections in terms of the technology.
What about his 6-member team that he appointed yesterday? What do you think of that to oversee the election?
It's yet another team. I've seen an objection from Jubilee suggesting that half of those people are NASA sympathizers. The point is, Jeff, is that this country does not lack an IT person who can manage this system. It doesn't lack a human resources person who can go to IEBC. It doesn't lack a person who has legal knowledge who can go to IEBC. Why are we quarreling about 2 people or 3 people? This country is bigger than those guys. Even if we got rid of all of them and replace them tomorrow, this country is bigger than. We must continue telling them that this much ado that Jubilee says, these 9 people, this fellow met with Sakaja.
It's tit for tat.
It's tit for tat.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
the difference, Jeff, is that prior to Chebukati and his team joining the commission, there were complaints against all those officers. They are on record, and Sakaja knows. We passed a report in Parliament which has got their names and their allegations. What he was supposed to do on getting into office was supposed to deal with them. He didn't. Now they have grown horns. And now, when you tell them to go, they don't want to go. They are complaining in the media that the people we have fired, who it is their responsibility to deal with, have refused to go. Kenyans can evict these people from office.
You know, this is the exact same thing that our counterparts in NASA had been talking about. You know, they said this person is partisan, is aligned to Jubilee, they should not be there. And then now when you see that subsequent to that, Chebukati from whatever, whichever whims, decides then to remove specific people based on NASA's complaints, and then Jubilee does a similar complaint on the people he's replaced them with, he refuses to change them, then there's a problem. You see, the IEBC, and I've kept saying this, the IEBC must always rise above the political fray. It's the referee. It must not pander to the whims of the political party that has a bigger press conference, or that is louder, or has more colorful ties.
That's definitely not NASA.
As in, they must give that confidence. And for us, we're actually really, pissed off with them, just to the extent that they, maybe out of omission or commission, and we've been worried, and you saw us very upset, because we felt for a long time that there are these cartels that have been, have taken probably NASA for ransom and getting into the judiciary and IBC, etc. We're concerned that if all they'll do is just pander to these whims, and are afraid of maybe protests, or afraid of being termed as Jubilee sympathizers, then we'll do anything that NASA wants. Then we don't have a neutral electoral management body. It does not feel good at all to have invested in a campaign, to have invested in an election, to go out there and, with your heart and soul and mind, and for everyone, even NASA, to know that indeed in this one, you got more votes than us.
Yeah.
We might not agree on exactly how much, but everybody knows you got more votes. And that decisive will, sovereign will of the people.
Who was counting?
Sovereign will of the people. There was no dispute in your petition on the numbers at all.
Who said?
At all.
We said that
your issue was security features.
The figure you have is not matched with anything.
No, all of those things were said in press conferences. They were not in the petition.
No.
Correct.
The numbers that Mudavadi read out were not in the petition.
Right. Let me ask you this.
So imagine, just let me finish that. The fact that the discernible, obvious, visible will of the people isn't changed because of that means that despite the fact that Mutula won, and I am sure he won, in fact he was voting in Nagoni and I voted for him, and I know he'd have done the same in Nairobi, and he will not say it now because Mambo Mingi is encumbered. Despite the fact that we know he has won, that majority of the people in Makweni voted for you, I will just find 4 forms that didn't have a watermark and say that yes, the discernible will of the people was for Mutula, but the procedure, the constitutionalism, which is a watermark now, the stamp was wrong. What democracy is that we're talking about?
No.
That is not democracy.
No. The standard, Jeff, don't allow this gentleman to.
No, but it's true.
Don't mislead us.
No.
The standard is simple, accurate, verifiable,
exactly,
and transparent. 1 + 1 is 2. The form you send from Boni, the form you send from Wote,
must add up.
Must be the form that you are supposed to send.
Yes.
The form cannot change midway. If you are supposed to send the form and you send a figure, you've made a mistake. So we want to say this.
But the result was based on the
let me
forms.
just
Right.
finish. Let me just finish. That's why I began with the history. And I read the book that he prescribed for me, Why Nations Fail.
Did you?
I did. Small differences.
Are you sure you read it?
I did, yes. Chapter 4, actually. It's about small differences, and it's actually, I wrote it down somewhere. Small differences and critical, they call it critical junctures.
Allow me, Jeff, before he finishes his point.
Let me
give you the follow-up of that book. It is The Rise and Fall of Nations. This is the rules of change in the post-crisis world by Rushir Sarma, and I'll sign it.
For me. You see?
Super.
And it's not a bribe.
So it's not a bribe.
Let me say this,
follow
Jeff.
this up and understand what institutions mean.
Yes. And that's why I began with...
And I thought that was a novel you were reading.
Yeah,
No,
it's
for
a
him.
book, yeah.
I bought it for him.
It's a follow-up.
We have a book club.
I began with 1997. Somebody challenged the election of President Moi in 1997.
Yeah.
It was decided on a technical issue that President Moi then was not served personally. We have then moved up to 2013, 2008. We sit down and we ask Kenyans, what are their views? They say, Kenyans go to vote, they vote peacefully, they go home, results are tallied. But the problem is, what happens when people count results and when they're supposed to transmit them? So therefore, Jeff, in fact, I want to give you this so that you read.
Okay.
This page. It's page 69 of the ruling of the Court of Appeal.
Just
Just
read it
read
loud.
it. Let's read it aloud.
Loud. The highlighted part? Or?
Here's the highlighted part.
So it says, from our own reading,
Yes.
that place, of all the provisions under review, the authorities relied on,
Yes.
and bearing in mind the history that we have set out in detail in this judgment, we are convinced that the amendments to the Act were intended to cure the mischief
Yes.
identified by the then former chairperson of the appellant
That was IEBC.
and other stakeholders.
Yes.
That mischief was the spectacle of all the 290 returning officers from each constituency and 47 county returning officers trooping to Nairobi by whatever means of transport, carrying in hard copy the presidential results, which they had announced at the respective constituency tallying centers. The other fear was that some returning officer would in the process tamper with the announced results.
Precisely. So even before we went to the elections in August, the IEBC was on notice. The parties were on notice. The Attorney General was on notice as amicus even then, that the system had changed. That is where the IEBC fellows, the people who interfered with this system, failed to read this and failed to read the memo. So for Sakaja, I understand, because I've done election petitions. Everybody used to say, so what? I got more votes than you. Show that you, even if this anomaly, 10 of them, if these 10 anomalies, even if I agree they were there, how did it affect the result? That has been the jurisprudence prior to 2017. That has changed. And
I'm
that
so
is the
happy.
portion where nobody understood.
Okay.
I'm so happy that Mutula has acknowledged on national live TV that we got more votes.
I never said
Yes,
anything.
yes,
like
just
that.
say that. Just say that.
What are you smoking?
He has said,
Should we play back the
he has
tape?
said, he has just said that. In fact, he has
What is
said
it?
that despite the fact that you possibly, or actually that you got more votes, it is not about that. It is about the systems
System.
and the procedure, and that is what has changed.
That is what
now,
Jeff read.
Now, Jeff, let me tell you, what that portends for us. The ruling has been done. We can't change that. There's an election on the 17th of October.
Yeah.
We can't change
If
that.
they've agreed, by the way, I don't know if
Whether they
they've
agree or not, there's an
what?
election on the
On
17th.
17th October.
It's 17th.
I mean, what are you talking
The
about?
election date has been set. It's been gazetted.
It's been gazetted.
The court gave them 60 days. It's 17th of October. And let me not even go into the remarks that were made, that were a bit unpalatable. It will be unfair to do that. We've agreed on that. The philosophical question that will remain beyond this election cycle is what the actual standard and threshold of discerning the sovereign will of the people must be moving forward.
It has to be simple,
And-
accurate, and verifiable.
Okay,
It's simple.
with the same IEBC,
You know,
are you going to agree to it, though? And when I
Let me
say
tell
you, it's your umbrella. I mean,
Yes,
it's
let me
NASA
tell you. Let
umbrella.
me tell you why I'm disappointed about the rhetoric in the public domain. Because Jeff, whether it is Akinyi, whether it is Wanjiko, we realize in coming up with this system in the Joint Select Committee that we could not put our faith in those human beings. So we
you put your faith in a
in
computer.
a system. A system that will give you an accurate, verifiable, and simple election. So what should we be asking?
Yes.
Somebody allegedly went into a system and interfered with it. Somebody allegedly picked a form. Somebody went and did something wrong. Yeah. What Chebukati and the political players should be asking is, can we possibly correct the anomalies in the system? Mm-hmm. Is it possible to wake up these people who are in France or England, who are in charge of the servers, to wake them up so that as we are counting our ballots, they are all awake? Those are the fundamental questions nobody is asking.
Okay, let me ask you both. If either of you guys, your parties lose, are we going to see ourselves at the Supreme Court again? Or will you...
Is that a rhetorical question? What are you asking? You know, it doesn't have to be Jeff. It doesn't have to be NASA or Jubilee. Remember that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be NASA or Jubilee. You, Jeff Koinange, can become a petitioner. That right is available.
I can assure you, after the 17th of October, based on how, the chips fell, there'll be another petition.
Come on.
And this can go, it can go into perpetuity.
But
we'll keep going.
No, there could be, it's possible there could be a question, like the one raised by Moses Kuria in the last petition, in the last general election.
On spoiled votes
and whatever. It could be a fundamental constitutional
question. I assure you.
There could be a petition of that nature.
There will be one.
But Jeff...
Or court may come out and say, I wasn't included.
Not at all.
Stop this thing.
Unlike Sakaja, I'm looking forward to 18th of October, a day when we have all the results, 290 constituencies, with Form 34A in the system. Mm-hmm.
And then also look forward to what? To heaven.
Yeah, come on. But you need to pray. I thought you guys pray all the time. Listen,
and you guys recently started.
What we need to tell Kenyans that there is a way forward, so that people on 16th or 15th of October don't leave like some guys he knows who get their sofa sets and move to the other side of town. and others...
What are you talking about?
You know them.
It's true.
They will leave.
But,
that is what you don't want to do.
We don't want.
That not happen when you have a coalition that even before August, in mid...
those are your voters, by the way.
In mid-July. No, I'm not. Leave my voters.
Yeah.
Leave my Nairobi voters.
They're the ones who left the city.
I know. And we're actually trying to stop them.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's because of the narrative of fear. But that won't happen for as long as you have, any side of the divide.
Yeah.
In mid-July, they're already ready with a petition. All that was missing was the figures.
Are you ready this time?
Line up the dots. And I'm not just saying that it was Jubilee. We're not ready with the petition. We're ready to win this election.
Before I take a quick break, let me ask you this. Do these guys, you think they want a coalition government? Do they want Nusum Kate? Is that what they're pushing for?
I think it's been made abundantly clear that that will not happen. So whether they wanted it or not.
There's talk, Senator.
I don't think
who by who?
There's talk out there.
I don't even think Kenyans want it.
What this Nusum Kate, 2 loaves of bread, this water, where do these things come from? Where did this who made that statement? You're famous for saying play back the tape. Play back which tape? Who asked for Nusum Kate of what?
But some of those tapes might just be phone calls and not
not
press conferences.
No.
But no, Jeff.
Even the constitutional structure
I keep saying
will not allow you to do it.
I keep saying this, and this is my own thought. It is not a party position. That at some point, when all this is settled, we will need to reimagine our democracy. I don't think that a form of democracy in Africa and in Kenya, where number one, the winner takes it all, and number two, that despite the fact that, yes, we will win, but you'll have 5 million, 4 million votes, means that you're not a leader, and that then going forward, cannot sit well in our geopolitics. And one form that I've told people that they need to think about is something called conscious socialism.
What now?
Just Google, and the listeners must Google. Consocialism. It's a form that recognizes the very nature of a nation that is built of many small different nations trying to come together. Because no matter what you do, for instance, for Ukambani people, no matter what you do for them, for as long as they do not see the leader on the table, they'll feel excluded.
Their own, you mean?
Yes. They'll feel excluded.
The constitution.
And yes, we have fidelity to our constitution. But also we must start thinking more that in this country, once you win an election, what can we, in terms of cohesion, what can we think about that then includes everyone else that says, guys, Mutula, I warn you, I am now a president or whatnot, but how do we move ahead as a country? Well, at some point we'll think about it.
Sure,
but our constitution now does not.
The question you should be asking, asking your viewers is, what informs the clamor for presidency in Kenya? What was the mischief in the constitution that was supposed to cure this clamor for presidency?
Without devolution.
Number two, in the new structure and devolved government, and I posted it, do we need to have a separate presidential election from other elections?
I saw that on Twitter today. Yes. I saw that. And also
but August 17th might give us that.
October 17th.
October. It's a separate presidential election.
But will it be like that every 5 years?
No, it will not.
Those are fundamental questions.
Beyond that, the thing that we feel it's a matter of life and death. If my tribesmate is running for president and does not get it, I have lost everything. I begin hating my neighbor.
Absolutely. And it looks the same in 22. It's not rocket science. It looks
unless you change the players. Unless you change the players.
But you can't. How?
What do you mean?
But don't hate the player. Hate the game. And that's the point. Deal with the game.
Let's take a break, come back. And also, how about just 1 7-year term for president?
I like that.
How about just that?
I like that.
1 7-year term.
Yeah.
You can't come back, you go home.
Fanya kazi, maliza.
Enda.
Next guy.
You think African presidents are going to agree to that?
Hey, we agreed to an annulment of an election. Why not?
You didn't agree.
We accepted.
You accepted. Okay, but they didn't move on.
No, they moved on.
No, we're
The question we're asking, Monica, where's our little poll question? Are Johnson, Sakaja, and Mutula Kilonzo what we call a reflection of the future of Kenya? Whoa, the numbers are going up. 77% of you say yes. 23% of you say no, not bad. Maybe these guys should be a ticket in the future sometime. Maybe you too.
Oh, yeah.
I might even retire from politics.
Ah, please, you're just warming up.
Imagine.
It's possible.
All right.
Mungu mbele. I keep saying Mungu mbele.
Kapisa. Keep tweeting at Sen Mutula, at Sakaja Johnson, at Koinange Jeff. Of course, at Susan TV Kenya. The hashtag is JKLive. JKLive takes a break. Yes, Monica, wanapiga kelele sana hapa. We'll be back in a moment.
You're watching JKL, brought to you by Telkom, moving with you. Celebrating our heritage, we are stepping into a bold new future. Join us. Telkom, move.